Good Monday before Christmas, my dear church family. I hope you're looking forward to a wonderful holiday. Of course, we had a wonderful service yesterday, and I hope that you are, as always, living your very best life in Jesus Christ. Well, as I said, we had a great service yesterday, but it was interesting having kids in the house, wasn't it? It certainly creates a challenging situation for a minister. What's interesting, though, is after the service was over, everybody seemed perfectly fine with it, but one person whom I really respect came up to me and said, "Kevin, I was very proud of you." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "You handled that so gracefully." I couldn't help but be flattered. I'm not saying that to flatter myself, but simply because when someone tells me that I am graceful, it reminds me of what a wonderful gift, especially at Christmas, grace is. You see, my mother was a pretty soft-spoken person. She seldom raised her voice when she spoke to folks. She was impressively calm most of the time, and she smiled a lot. I suppose that's particularly impressive when you consider that she was raising four rather rambunctious boys, each of which had a temper. But she truly believed that a soft answer turned away wrath. I guess what I'm trying to say is my mother's default setting was to approach life with grace. She was graceful in word or deed. I mean, Colossians 4:6 reminds us, "Let your conversation always be full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone." You know, I wish I could look back on my life and say my default setting was grace like Mom's, but the truth be told, I have spent most of my life with two standard default settings. The first was called "Leave me alone, I don't care," and the second was total, blunt, unvarnished truth the way I see it. And neither was exactly productive, and invariably caused me as much grief and pain as it did those poor unfortunates who were forced to have to deal with me, especially my loving wife. It's only now, later in my life, that I have been blessed by the influence of Christ in my life and the guiding of the Holy Spirit that I have been able to truly begin to understand that the grace of God is something that is rained down and continues to rain down upon my whole life. And that, as a follower of Christ, it's my job to share that grace. I mean, let's face it. We have a tendency to default, if you will, to selfishness in our dealings with others instead of grace. And often we let harsh, graceless words pass our lips, damaging others when they most need to hear and feel the grace of God. I mean, the Bible is clear that the tongue is the most unruly member of the body, and it says those who cannot control their speech cannot truly serve God. We need to remember that, as Henry David Thoreau once wrote, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. The person sitting next to you at church next Sunday, the lady pushing that cart at Walmart, the one who's putting gas in the car at the next pump, the man behind you at the movies who's talking so loudly or wanting to buy a ticket, or the student across from you at school. You have no idea what that person's going through. If you did, chances are you'd be prompted to show grace or to say a few quick, encouraging words. The thing is, remember this, please. Grace is always appropriate and always in need. And that means that we need to desperately channel grace at certain times, like when we're waiting for someone who's perpetually late, or driving down 119 behind that super slow car, or how about this one, forgiving your spouse and children or friend again, or stopping to listen when you have better things to do, choosing not to be offended, saying something in the most positive manner possible, or simply not saying something negative at all, going out of your way for someone you barely know, or giving the benefit of the doubt, taking the first move toward reconciliation. I mean, God is a God of grace, and when we don't show His grace, are we really truly being His followers? There's this author named Cynthia Rucci who says this: "The God of grace watches people treating each other unkindly, rudely, sharply, critically, and it must break His heart, as if He were an artist who creates something beautiful and elegant, and it's tossed in a corner or used as a mat for muddy boots." See, those who receive grace by the bucket but dish it out by the teaspoonful just don't get the concept and the reason for God's lavish grace. I mean, His grace has been poured out on us. And yeah, I know grace seems unnatural and hard and impossible for us at times. I like this quote by a guy named Hudson Taylor, who says, "I have found there are three stages to every good work of God. First, it's impossible, then it's difficult, and then it's done." What if, by God's grace, we decided to use grace as our default setting? What if when we got up in the morning, just like a computer boots up to a pre-programmed thought or a pre-programmed pattern, what if we were pre-programmed to boot up in grace? What if we let God's grace show up in our lives, in our words, in our deeds? What if we let grace really abound in us? I mean, this is Christmas. This is a perfect time to do that. So today, as you go about your life, remember that grace is always appropriate. It's always needed. And not just by us, but by everyone we meet. Why do you think we love that hymn so much? Amazing Grace. How sweet that sounds. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope that you're preparing for a wonderful Christmas. I want you to know that, as always, I'm here should you need me. And I truly love you all. Merry Christmas.